Okay guys, welcome back to week 2. Hopefully week 1 went well for you. Week 2, I know this is material that's like from 5th, 6th, 7th grade, but let me tell you, this is probably the most real world applicable stuff you can learn. In fact, if you talk to your parents and they say that they don't do math ever in this life and they're like, I never use math. Okay, I promise this is one place where they use math. So when we're talking about the importance of this, the idea is that we are going to talk about taxes. We're going to talk about tipping at a restaurant. We're going to talk about, maybe something's on sale. So those are just a few things about why this is so important. So definite real world possibility. So let's write down a few of those. So let's talk about just real world. This is why this is so important. So like I said, talk to your parents. Tipping. Maybe a sale. Something's on sale. So I'll put like discounted items. And like I said, your parents will use it for taxes. We're not going to do taxes today because, well, we're 12 years old. So we don't need to worry about that right now. But, tipping at a restaurant's important, and deciding if you have enough money to buy something, that's important. And we will talk about the tax, like sales tax. We will talk about that today. Okay, cool. So let's talk about first the basics on how to go between the worlds, and then we'll be able to actually apply this stuff, okay? So here we go. All right, we're going to do this in a table format where you're going to be given one of the columns, and then we're going to try to figure out what would happen to get to the next. And this is one thing that I think most students do remember, this part, where if you are given 12%, if you want to turn a percent into the decimal, you're supposed to move the decimal place 2 places to the left. Okay, so here's how this works. You take the percent, and see how there's no decimal on it? Well, you actually put the decimal at the back. If you think that there is no decimal point, it's there, it's just invisible at the back. And if you want to move into decimals, you need to move the decimal point 2 places left. So it's in the back right now behind the 2, so we're going to move it once, twice, and it would look like that. So 0.12 is the same thing as 12%, okay? Now, the reason you want to first go from a percent to a decimal is for several reasons. When we do the real world stuff, you can't like multiply by a percent. You just can't. You can't, not even in the calculator do we do that. So we want to change it to a decimal first, then we'll be able to math it out. Now to go from a decimal to a fraction, it's actually awesome because you guys learned somewhere along the way what each place value was. Like this was the tenths place, right? This is the hundredths place, and hundredths, sorry. My spelling is challenged. Okay, tenths place, hundredths place. What's the next one back here that we don't see? Well, then it would be the thousandths place, and so on and so forth. So, thousandths. Okay, so you learned about place value in elementary school, and that's important because when you have a decimal and you want to write it as a fraction, you just take the entire decimal that you see, which in this case it's a 12, and that would be your numerator, okay? Now to decide what the denominator is going to be is you just read the number to yourself. Like this right here is the number 12 hundredths. Why is it hundredths? Because the 2, the last number in your number, is in the hundredths place. So I would read this as 12 hundredths because that's the spot that it stops at. And since I said the word hundredths, that's what goes in your denominator. Neato burrito. All right. Now what do we do with this number? Well, sometimes your teachers just want to know, like, hey, do you know what it is as a fraction? Sometimes they may want you to reduce it, so keep in mind if you can see that there's a number that goes into the top and the bottom, go ahead and reduce it. So I think 4 goes into both of those, so I'm going to go ahead and reduce this fraction. 12 divided by 4 is 3. and 100 divided by 4 is 25. So this is the most simplified version of the fraction, but that's pretty much it. So to go from a percent to a decimal, move the decimal point, then read the number to yourself and it becomes a fraction. So let's try that again. All right, the percent is 17.8%. Now there's already a decimal there for us, okay? So whenever we are turning this into a decimal, 17.8, we're going to take that decimal and go 2 places to the left, and now it's in front of the number, okay? So 0.178. And that would be my decimal number that I'm going to use to do math with later. But if I want that to become a fraction, we just need to read the number to ourselves. So this isn't 178 hundredths. Look where the 8 ends up. It's in the thousandths place. It's back here in the 3rd spot. So when you read it, it's 178 thousandths. So 178 goes on top, and then thousandths means that 1,000 goes on the bottom. And like I said, if we wanted to reduce this, go ahead and try to reduce it. This one's not as easy to reduce. I think that 2 goes in here. So I would cut this one in half and cut this one in half. That's going to be 500. 178 divided by 2. You may have to go off to the side of your paper and actually figure that one out. 2, let me see if I can figure it out. That is 89. Okay, so I think this is as simplified as it can get, but it's more important that you're able to just do that part, okay, if your teacher says change it. Okay, all right, cool. So now what do we do if we're given different info? Okay, well, it doesn't matter, people, because if we're given the decimal first, you just do these things in a different order, but you're kind of doing the same thing. So the first thing is I'm going to go ahead, since we just converted a decimal to a fraction, let's go ahead and do that again. So if I'm given the decimal 0.123, when I read that number, it's 123, and then what place is the 3 in? The thousandths place. So remember, always go by the back number and what place that you're in. So that's pretty much it as a fraction. I don't think a number goes into both of those, so I'm just going to be done right there. And now if we're going to, the only blank left is to turn this decimal back into a fraction. Well, if to go from a percent to a decimal, I had to move the decimal twice to the left, right? Well, if I'm going the other way, now you just move the decimal the other way. So if I'm given 0.123 and I need to go back to percent, now I get to move the decimal twice in the opposite direction, and so it's a 12.3%. And hopefully that makes sense. Just whichever way you're going from percent to decimal or decimal to percent is whether you move the decimal to the left or the right. And as far as a memory trick, if you like using letters of the alphabet or something, maybe you could remember, okay, so if you're going percent to decimal, that was a left, okay, percent to decimal left. If we're going decimal to percent, we need to go to the right. And you could always make up a cute little saying, Paul dislikes Legos. I don't know. You could make up something like that just to try to see if it'll stick in your mind, okay? Dr. Pepper rocks. That's what I would do, because Dr. Pepper does rock. It is the best. Or rules, or whatever you guys say now. Dr. Pepper rules. Okay, so whatever you want to do to remember, but that's how you move your decimal. Okay, the hardest one, and there's no shortcut for it, is this last thing here, 3/7. So if you're given the fraction, and then you have to work back into these, this one's kind of stinky, I'm not going to lie. You actually have to keep in mind that when you see a fraction, that fraction bar really does mean you're dividing something. So a fraction bar means division. And I'll just write that if you don't know it. Fraction means division. And we usually don't think of it that way, but that's what that fraction bar is. And so to get from a fraction to a decimal, you actually have to divide. Divide. And the way that you would divide is the top number divided by the bottom number. top number divided by the bottom number. And 7 does not go into 3, but that's why you learned over the last few years that you could put a decimal here and then put zeros behind it and try to do the decimal that way. So 7 doesn't go into 3, but 7 does go into 30. Now, how many times does 7 go into 30? I think that's 4 times. And if there's a decimal down here under the division bar, you also put it up here above the division bar, right? Okay, now how do we do long division? 7 times 4 is 28. Then we subtract that number, so we have, what is that, 30 minus 28, that's a 2. Then we bring down the next number, and that's a 0. And so 7 goes into 20, what is that, 2 times? Almost 3, but only 2. And then 2 times 7 is 14. We subtract that, we get a 6. And we could keep going and putting zeros on as long as we want. We really could. But I don't want to do this problem forever, because what if the decimal goes for forever? So at some point you just stop, and do at least 2 of these bad boys. But once you get 2, you could do your answer like that. It's an approximation. So we'll do that for approximations. Not exactly equal, but it's close. Now that we have the 0.42, we can go back into percent just like we did above. So a decimal to a percent, decimal to percent, Dr. Pepper rules. So the decimal goes twice to the right, and it becomes 42%. All right. Awesome sauce. Okay, and then this last one I'm going to do really, really quickly. It's the same thing as above. I just gave you a mixed number first. So the first step here is you do want it to be an improper fraction first. So to make this an improper fraction, I don't know how your teacher taught you, but I just remember sort of working around it backwards, kind of a two-step problem. You do the bottom times the number out front. So 5 times 2 is 10. Then you add the number on top. So it looks something like this. These two you multiply, the bottom two you multiply, and then you add the top one, okay? So that would be a 13 over 5. 2 times 5 is 10, plus 3 is 13, all over 5. Now you're going to have to work backwards, so we'll do what we did a second ago. 13 divided by 5. 5 goes into 13 twice. Bring down the 3, and 2 is just not a very good number to have, so now we could add one more decimal place maybe. So bring down that 0. 5 goes into 36 times, so it's a 2.6. So 2.6 would be the magic number here. 2.6. Then to go back to a percent, move the decimal over twice to the right. 0.026%. And that is how it works. Okay, remember these videos can be long, so this one's actually long because it's got some real world stuff on it, so feel free to push pause right now, go take a break, go to the bathroom, get a snack, annoy your brother or sister, and then come back whenever you're ready to do the real world stuff with all of this jazz. Okay, so now we do get to work on the real worldness of all this, and this is the fun stuff right here, because now whenever you go shopping you can totally help your parents with all this. The first box here says like, OMG, there's a sale, and that's exactly what your mom and dad use this for. If you're out shopping and you see something and it's got a percent on it, like usually you'll see something that's like 30% off, right? That means a portion of the total amount is knocked off. Sometimes, you know, that it's a 50% off or 70% off. The bigger the number here, the better for you because you're taking more money off. But if you are on a budget or something, or let's just say that you're shopping and you want to know how much will it cost me, that's why all that stuff above was important. So here's the idea. Let's pretend that you see a shirt or shoes, or I don't know what you like to shop for, a toy, that is $29.99, okay? And then you see this 30% off that's on top of it, okay? Well, there's no math way, even if you had a calculator or something on you, that you could actually work that out and get the price that it's going to be. What you're going to have to do is turn your decimal into a percent. I'm a liar, the other way around, haha. Whenever you see a percent, you always want to turn it into a decimal first, okay? So how do we turn a percent into a decimal? Well, Paul dislikes Lego, so I need to go to the left 2 times. So 30% off would be, it would be a 0.3 would be the decimal, okay, 0.3. And then you're going to take that 0.30 or 0.3, and that's what you're going to multiply by the number down here. So first you turn it into a decimal, and then you need to multiply these 2 numbers, 0.30 times this. Now if you want to do this by hand just for practice, knock yourself out. I think I'm going to pull up a calculator and just type that in. And you know what, before I do that, guys, some of you may have caught, I think I made a mistake up here. When I moved my decimal, did I make a mistake? Where are you? Yes, I did, right here on this one. If you noticed it, good for you. Feel free to make fun of me. Sorry, that was a lie. I forgot to go right with my decimal. The 2.6, it should have been 260%. That was my bad. I'm very sorry about that. I sometimes get right and left mixed up because I guess there's something wrong with me. I don't know. Sorry about that. Okay, back to the real world. Okay, so I'm going to pull up my handy dandy calculator, and I'm going to just type this in. If you've got a calculator, feel free, because we're not practicing multiplication right now. We're actually just practicing like doing percents. Where's the multiply? Times 0.30 equals, okay, so it's $8.997. Okay, what will that round to? Well, in my book, that rounds to about $9, right? That was about $9 once you round it, okay? And so that right there is how much you can take off. So take off $9. So if the price was $29.99, then this is actually going to cost you $20.99. So what was the process here? If you want to make notes, we had to turn the percent into a decimal. Then we multiplied the price by the discount. Then we subtract the discount from the original price. And that is that's what's called a sale price, okay? So that is our sale price. Now, if you had $21 in your pocket and you wanted to buy that, don't get excited yet, because oops, there's a little thing called tax. And tax is an amount that if you still have that calculator, we can figure out what the tax is going to be. The tax rate in Texas is 0.0825, okay? That is the multiplier that we use in Texas. So what you would have to do is the same process that we did over here. We would have to multiply our price by that 0.0825, okay? And then add that amount back on. Add the tax back on. So let's take our $20.99, if that's our sales price, and let's multiply it by what I just said. And once again, I do not want to do this by hand, so I've got my handy dandy calculator, and I'm going to type it all in. If you've got a calculator, hit pause, type it in. Let's see if we get the same thing. So there's the sales price. I'm going to multiply that by 0.0825 and hit equals. Okay, so my tax is $1.70. Was that 73 or 74? 73. $1.73. Gonna add that back on. So 9 plus 3 is 2. That's a 10. That's a 17. So I better have $22.72 in my pocket if I wanted to buy this pair of shoes or shirt or toy or whatever it was after the sale, but then also after tax. Now, the best way to practice this is actually at the store. And I know it's going to sound completely nerdy, but nobody's going to care, and you don't know them anyway, so forget about them. Go to a store that's having a sale, pick an item, and actually do this math. Turn the percent into a decimal, multiply it, use your calculator, do all that. Your phone's got a calculator. They'll never even know you're doing math at the store. They'll just think you're taking a selfie or something. You can even smile while you're doing it and pose, and they'll just be fooled. But practice at the store. That's the best way. Okay, the last thing we're going to do is called finding the percent change. Now, this is interesting. There's just kind of like a technique for this, and it's hard to explain why it works, but basically a percent change, let me write out the way that we do it, and then we'll practice it, okay? So I'm going to write the how to do it down here, okay? So you're going to take the difference between the Okay, now I use the word price because I often think about money. Usually money is the only time I'm using this in the real world, but it doesn't have to be price. It could just be number. So take the new number that's given, subtract the original number, and then divide it by the original number. This is all about the calculator. So it's not going to be difficult. It's just going to be typing it into that formula. So like let's say that somebody says, what is the percent change? What is percent change from, 70 to 85? Okay, so we're going from 70 to 85, and we're supposed to find out what percentage that is or how much that changed by. So it doesn't really matter, if you put the 70 in the front or the 85 in the front, or like which one you want to call the new number. I'm calling it like we're starting at 70, so like that's the old number. I'll call it O for original or old. This one is like we're going to 85, so it's like the new number. And I'm going to stick it down into this formula right here. So new price, 85, minus the old price, over the old price. And this is going to be something that we calculate. So 85, why did I put 75? I don't know. Okay, that was a 70. All right. 85 minus 70 is what? 15, I think, divided by 70. And once you figure out that number as a decimal, then you're going to have the percent change, okay? So 50 over 70, if you don't want to divide that by hand, let's pull up our calculator and let's just type it in. Remember, the fraction means division. 15 divided by, whoopsie, let's clear that. 15, where's the divided by on this silly little calculator? There it is. Divided by 70 is equal to 0.2. Okay, this is giving me 0.214. What was that next number? 2. Okay, it's giving me this crazy decimal, blah, 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 blah. Okay, we don't care about all that. It wants the percent change, not the decimal change. So how do I turn a percent into a decimal? Well, I move my decimal that I have twice to the, which way? Percent to decimal, left. Paul dislikes Legos, so I need to move it twice to the percent. Actually, we're going decimal to percent. Man, I'm all kinds of mixed up today with lefts and rights. Okay, this is a decimal right now, isn't it? It's a decimal. We want it to be a percent. So Dr. Pepper rules, so we need to go twice to the right. Beep, beep. See, everybody gets confused on this, even old people like me. But that's how you would turn it in from a decimal to a percent. Dr. Pepper rules, twice to the right. So 21.4% is the change, the percent change. Okay, so give the homework a try, guys. I know this is a long video. This is the longest one we'll probably have because I really feel like it's one of the most important things in the world is to understand money, percents, and fractions. So anyway, we will see you later. Good luck trying those problems.